It's midnight in the slums of the trade city of Dorder, and you've just entered a mysterious little hole in the wall that you were told would be of lucrative business opportunities for you. The floors are slick with fluids you'd rather not consider, and a strange little man behind a counter wielding a hunting knife smiles at you. You sling a sack that was laying across your shoulders upon the floor, and pelts come spilling out. His smile widens, and you know that incredible loot is about to be yours. My name is Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman. Let's talk about poaching in Final Fantasy Tactics: The Ivalice Chronicles, shall we? Hello everyone, if you enjoy what I do, and don't mind if I occasionally indulge in little roleplay vignettes setting the scene for what's going on in the games we discuss, like Final Fantasy Tactics: The Ivalice Chronicles, then a like on this video and a subscription to the channel would be very much appreciated. Thank you so much. Today we are discussing Poaching, which has seen some decent updates and upgrades in the Ivalice Chronicles that make it a fair bit more interesting and engaging to actually play around with compared to past versions of the game. This is another topic that I've received a lot of requests to cover, and don't worry, the Zodiac system really is still something that we're going to be working on, but I need a little bit more time to be able to make that happen, and I've been cooking this poaching video in the background for a little while, no pun intended, so I wanted to put this one out there first. Today we're going to be talking about the entire poaching system, what it even is, why you might want to do it, some of the early game benefits that you can get from it, and some of the most efficient ways that you can grind out some of the best loot that you can once you have the relevant monsters available, as well as how to get those monsters on your team. There's a lot to cover here, and I just gotta say, I'm glad that the team made the changes to poaching that they did, because it was basically something I never cared to bother with before, but now it actually feels interesting and engaging, and you can get some cool stuff. So, first off, what even is poaching? Poaching is a system that you gain access to in Chapter 3 of Final Fantasy Tactics, wherein you can go to any of the various different merchant or trade cities, such as the merchant city of Dorder, to access certain shops that will allow you to trade in carcasses that you have poached for certain items. Sometimes they're more mundane, sometimes they're more rare, depending on the quality of the carcass that you've attained. While there are many monsters that you can poach that will give you, like, as basic of an item as a potion, the benefit is that you'll get that item for 50% off what you would get it for buying it in the actual shop. So you do actually save a fair bit of money by doing this if you're just passively poaching monsters as you play through the game. Of course, you might ask yourself, how is it that I go about poaching monsters? I didn't see an option for this. You need to specifically learn the support ability Poach from thieves, and then equip it on characters, have those characters get the final blow on a monster with their basic attack, and then you will poach the carcass. It's a simple system that's slightly esoteric to unlock just because, you know, there's so many different support abilities you can equip, you might not even notice that Poach exists, and you have this whole set of mechanics behind it, but if you do actually look into it and decide to utilize it, there can be some very nice stuff that you're able to get a hold of, and it's made all the easier to do now with the Ivalice Chronicles. So with that said, what has actually changed with this newest version of the game? Two major things, one of which is a little tangential but makes the whole process a whole lot easier. The first is that when you go and poach a monster, it will actually tell you directly whether you got a normal carcass or a rare carcass, and this will be denoted by a little like star symbol next to the name of the carcass, kind of similar to the symbol for shiny Pokemon if you're familiar with that. Unless the numbers have changed for this version of the game, and I don't believe that they have, you have a 1 in 8 chance every time you poach a monster of getting a rare carcass. Once you have poached the monster, you don't have to do anything else. Once you can actually access the poacher's shop in these various different trade cities, you'll see that it's there. You don't have to like do anything special. It's just in the menu, and then you can go ahead and buy the item if you so choose. If you don't choose, it's just not something that's particularly useful for you, you can just sell the carcass, get some bonus gold, and move on with your life. The second quality of life feature with this system, the more tangential one, is how much easier it is to retry fights now. Whereas in past versions of Final Fantasy Tactics, if you needed to restart a fight for whatever reason, you had to basically close the game, reopen it, reload your save, or if you were on the original PSX version, wholly restart the console. Now you can just go into the menu as soon as you're able to access it in battle and just hit retry. You don't even have to reset your formation if you don't want. You can just retry from the beginning of the battle and start all over again. This is so significantly faster than any previous method, that combined with the fact that you actually know before having to go to the poacher's shop if you got a rare carcass or not, that's like maybe a specific item that you're looking for, that you can much more easily farm for the gear that it is that you're trying to get access to. What previously was a system that could take 15 to 20 minutes or even up to multiple hours to find one particular piece of gear that you wanted to be able to put on your team has now been reduced significantly, to the point that I was able to get 3 very rare Night Swords far earlier than you'd normally be able to access them, just because it was so much easier for me to restart a battle, re-put in the monsters that I was trying to poach, see if I got the rare carcass, and then reset again and again until I was able to do so. This actually makes the system pretty worthwhile for your time, and is definitely a very positive change, as was outlined by the devs in the pre-release interviews that we got leading up to the game. So that's how the system works and how it's been changed. But what is the actual benefit for diving into this side system, right? Like, how good is the stuff that you can get? The answer is actually pretty dang good. Once you know what rare monsters to look for and how to actually farm the system properly, there is a ton of great stuff you can get, as I alluded to, such as Night Swords. I have 3 Defender Night Swords, a piece of gear that without poaching and without very specific endgame farming, you can only get one of by stealing it from a major boss. For context, the Defender is a devastatingly powerful physical attack Night Sword that also has an absolutely massive parry rate, and with it you can make devastatingly strong frontline characters who are incredibly difficult to hurt and then can also slap back extremely hard as a response when they do get attacked. And this is just one example. If you're smart and you go through and you actually recruit one of the potential pigs that you can get in Chapter 2, then spend the time to get a bunch of higher level pigs and then start farming them with poaching, you can get the incredibly powerful Chantage perfume that puts permanent re-raise and other buffs on your characters when you equip it on them. This essentially breaks the game completely in half, and note, I don't have footage of this, but if you're interested in the specific guide for this, you can go and check out Coffee Potato's poaching guide for it. But it's just another example of why this is such a strong system if you choose to put the time into grinding it all out. There's a myriad of other very powerful pieces of gear that you can get through the poaching system as well. I will have linked in the description a full roster of all of the different monsters that you can get that have high quality gear. I highly recommend that you peruse it if you choose to go and check this whole thing out. As far as I'm aware, that roster has not changed. None of the items have changed with this latest version of the game. If that is the case, my apologies, but as far as I know, nothing has changed here, and you're safe to use the below guide. So great, that's how the system works. That's what's changed about it. It's why you might be interested in doing it, but I can hear you asking, how are you actually able to target farm particular monsters, right? Are you just supposed to run into the same random battle over and over on a particular map in the hopes that a rare spawn of a monster that you want to poach shows up, and then if it doesn't, you have to do it all over again? No. That's not how you're going to go about things here. For this, we're going to be using the mediator to recruit monsters and then begin breeding them, because what is poaching if not specifically farming different types of animals, right? So, what you're going to need here, if you really want to dive into the poacher's mindset, is not only someone who has spent some time in Thief to be able to get the relatively cheap poach support ability, but also a mediator, or for old heads like myself, an orator. The mediator/orator is absolutely key because they are able to recruit monsters to your team. And as you may have learned if you've played through enough of Chapter 2 to recruit Boko the Chocobo, once you have a monster in your party, they will then begin to create eggs of their own species of monster that can then potentially hatch into the second and then eventually third tier of monster. Now, it's important to keep in mind here, the tier 1, for example, yellow chocobos for chocobos, can only lay eggs for the tier 2, and then to be able to get tier 3 monsters, you need to have the tier 2 that then lays an egg for a tier 3, but they could also lay a tier 1 egg. So you want to make sure that you're working your way through the ranks of monsters to get tier 2s so that you can begin trying to farm tier 3s. For chocobos, that would be yellow chocobo to black chocobo to red chocobo, and the guide that I have listed in the description will show you all of these different tiers of monsters. Rather than me going through every single one of them here, just cross-reference what you're looking for there, and you'll find out pretty quick what it is that you need. To recruit these monsters, you will at baseline need a mediator with the Entice skill. This is an extremely cheap skill. It's one of the main reasons that you get a mediator in the first place, and it allows you to recruit both human and monster enemies. Once you do have this mediator, you want to boost their magic attack as much as possible through things like gear and specific skills, because magic attack is what dictates how successful Entice will be. It will still be a fairly low chance to hit, but you take your mediator into the battle where you can find the monster that it is that you want to recruit, have the rest of your team slaughter everything else in the enemy party until it is just that monster left, and then spend as much time as you need spamming Entice at it with your mediator until it finally joins you. You'll more likely than not only find tier 1 monsters in most battles that you go into, but that's fine. So long as you're able to find like a treant, which are the monsters you'll eventually be able to get the defender sword from, or rare things like behemoths or high-level bombs or what have you. So long as you have one of them, you will eventually be able to get all 3 tiers of them. Once Entice is successful, you can end the battle, recruit the monster to your team, and then begin running back and forth between every and all cities to begin producing monster eggs. For your sanity, I recommend targeting one family of monsters at a time. That way you can guarantee that any egg that you get is going to be for the monsters that you're trying to poach. You can then fill up your inventory with monsters, remove any ones that are not the tier that you're looking for, and then begin poaching. Do keep in mind as well, really quick before we move on to just the short battle section on how to efficiently poach things, if you do choose to use a class that is not a mediator for this attempt to entice, say maybe Black Mage, because it's in general going to have higher magical attack than mediator itself, you're going to want to make sure that you learn the support ability Beast Talk or potentially the Tame action from mediator so you can more easily recruit these monsters. Without Beast Talk, normal Entice won't work on them at all. You just need to make sure that you have the relevant skills equipped, as Mediator has Beast Talk innately, but other classes do not. Anyway, once you have the monsters that you are trying to poach, you can simply load into a very simple map. Most people are going to use Mandalia Plains. If you have a different map that you prefer for any reason, that's totally fine. It really does not matter what you choose here. And then deploy 4 of your characters and the monster that you're trying to poach. Ideally, each of your characters will have the poach skill equipped just for efficiency, but you don't need to do this if you don't want to. Once the map begins, before any enemies are able to approach you, you're going to want to have your poachees beat the crap out of the monster that you're trying to poach until they finally down it and poach it, and then watch and see if this little text box pops up here and says you got the regular carcass or the rare carcass. If you don't get the rare carcass, and that is what it is that you're looking for, which most of the time it will be, you can quickly open the menu, retry from the beginning of the battle, and do it all over again until you do finally get it. So long as you don't have horrible RNG, you should be able to find the carcass that you're looking for in 5 to 10 minutes. It usually does not take that long. And then if you have more of that monster that you're trying to farm, say you want multiple Defender Knight Swords, then you can finish the battle out, start another battle, put another copy of that monster in, and do the whole process over again. Note that you do need to successfully clear the fight. You do need to then go through, beat all of the enemies that are on the map, win it like you would any other battle, and then you will have successfully acquired your carcass and you can bring it to the shop at any time. There's 2 key things to keep in mind here. By and large, you need to use your basic attacks to be able to poach the monster. You can't have poach on like a Black Mage and then just nuke it with flare and expect to get the corpse. That will not happen. And even though you can't access the poacher's den until you get to chapter 3, you can still poach monsters prior to that. The carcasses will just show up once you get to the den in chapter 3. So if you are lucky enough to, say, recruit a pig or some other rare monster and you don't feel like having them just sit filling up party space until you get to chapter 3, you can start poaching them earlier on and then go to the poacher's den later on. And that's the long and short of the process. Once you go to the poacher's den, you look through all the list of monsters that you have carcasses of, you will see which ones were normal, which ones were rare, and which ones give you specific gear that you can typically only buy through the poacher's den, so you know what the good stuff is. Some of these items can be very pricey, so do expect that, but if you're doing this type of grind, then you probably have enough money from grinding other battles for other reasons anyway, so I wouldn't be too worried about that. Using this system, you can find rare hair accessories like berets and ribbons that make you immune to some, if not all, status effects, the aforementioned Chantage and Defender, which are some of the most powerful basic accessories and weapons in the game, and potentially some other fun stuff that I won't necessarily spoil. I'll let you find that out for yourself as you dig through the list of poachable monsters. This has always been a really cool system that is a nice way to be able to really min-max your characters and get some powerful loot earlier than you normally would be able to, if you would normally be able to get it at all. But it was always so much of a pain that I never really would recommend that anyone mess with it unless they were on like their second or third or latter run of the game and wanted to do something different. Now, because it is so much easier to restart battles, because it is so much more obvious when you get a rare carcass, it is actually something that has some play to it. So I do recommend, especially if this is your first time playing the game, that you experiment with doing some poaching. I, in particular, am very much enjoying my Defender Parry Frontline Knight Paladin, who is absolutely untouchable in almost every capacity, deals good damage in melee, and has a full suite of white magic to support himself and his allies. And it would be a far less successful build without having poached the Defender so early on, just as an example of the type of thing that you can do. If you do choose to engage in the poach system, if you have any other tips for more speedy and efficient poaching, or you just get a really cool item that enables a strong build, tell us about all that in the comments. Start up a conversation, give some hints to your fellow players, and maybe together we can find some truly ridiculous options. For now, though, I'm going to wrap this one up here. If you have any further questions about how this whole system works, do not be afraid to ask. But until the next time, my name has been Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you all have a good night. Stay safe and healthy out there. And remember, be good to each other, y'all. Bye now.